Reading with Joan.
Hi. Hi, kids. It says, it's Reading with Joan StoryTime. Hello. Okay. Okay. Did you hear? Oh, the bird says it's time for us to enjoy a fun time of sharing our stories. Welcome. I'm Joan, your host for today. We have a special story for you. We have an announcement. Are you ready for this? Come along. Let's go. Our Kids Creative Contest. And what is this about? It's a submission of short stories, art, songwriting, poems, science, herbs. If you have anything creative, you can submit to us. Remember, you have a chance of winning a £50 grand prize. Just send your submission to john@infohubme.com. The deadline is April 27, 2020. The theme of the contest is Who Am I? You could actually write something that is related to all the things that we are doing in the program. But whichever way you choose, the theme of the contest is Who Am I? So we would love you to make your submission to us as soon as possible. Kids out there, remember, make your submission between now and April 27th. Let's creep into the story. What are you saying? Let's just have a little short break and then we'll be back. Hi, kids. Okay, we are back. We heard you. Oh, this little bird is so impatient. Oh no! Yes, we are going to read. The bird wants us to read. Remember, we've been reading the story, The Pot of Wisdom, Ananse's story. Today's own is, can anybody guess? Let's find out what the title is. The title of today's short story is Why Pig Has a Short Snout. Okay, so why did he have? Can anybody tell me? Let's find out. Oh, what a piggy. What happened to him? Can you see the picture? The pig looks like an elephant. Oh dear. What happened to him? Is that the picture of a pig you see now in your storybooks? I guess not. Let's find out. It used to be, not very long ago, that a pig had a trunk as long as the elephant. Oh yes, I see. And so proud was he of his great trunk. With it, he could suck up water for his own shower. He could wet the plants in his herb garden. He could snort and blow a scary tune. And he could coil his trunk up and tie it in a knot. In those days, Pig was also a moneylender. His success was due to the fact that no one could ever make off with his money. With his trunk, he would sniff and find a cockpit and drag him from his hiding place. Pig was very proud of his useful trunk. Now, Ananse borrowed some money from Pig to pay for the dowry of his son's marriage. And because Ananse loved to keep up with appearances, he had borrowed a lot to show his what? Two things. One person is proud of his trunk and another person is keeping up with appearances. A month passed and it was time to pay back the pig. But Ananse, it seems, had forgotten his debt. Here I come, said Pig with his long trunk to seek and find. But when he got to Ananse's house, Ananse pleaded for another week. By then, my debtors would have paid me back and I'll be ready when you come by. You want to find out what happened? Whether Ananse paid or he was witty enough to wriggle himself out of the situation. Let's come back. Okay, you have better have my money, threatened the pig, or else you would have the trashing of your life. Then he waved his trunk in the air and went off to collect from someone else. The next week, Pig returned, snuffing and blowing impatiently. My money! I want my money! Now you startled me, said Ananse, looking down a long bamboo pole. See, I have just dropped your money down the it was my fault. I will reach in with my trunk and get it out. And so the pig reached down into the hollowed bamboo hole. I can't find it, he said. Reach a little deeper, said Ananse. You need to stretch just a little further. So pig strained and pushed. When he realized his trunk couldn't go any further, he tried to pull it out, but he couldn't. It was stuck. He moved his head with that way and that way, but it was stuck. He wiggled and rolled and banged his head, but it was stuck. Help! He cried. Help! Help! But Ananse had gone to hide in the web, and none of the other creatures was willing to help. Finally, with one big shake of pig's head, the bamboo pole fell off, and alas, it was strong, and it never grew back. As for Ananse, he did not pay his debt, and pig never bothered to ask again. I feel so sad. Kids, are you? Don't be. We'll come back and find out what we learned from this story. Will you come back with me?
Reading with Joan.
I know. This bird is so wise. Okay. Birdie said that we learned a few things from this story. The first thing is pride. The pig was proud of his trunk, although it was useful to him, but he was also so confident that his trunk would save him from every situation. Number 2, keeping up with appearances, says the birdie. Stop keeping up with appearances. Once you can afford something, you can afford something. Don't always go an extra mile and get things you can't afford, kids. And number 3, don't always think you can solve a situation by yourself. The pig was thinking he can get the money, but Ananse had already set a trap for him, and he lost his trunk forever. So, kids, be very smart, be very careful. Don't allow your pride to go ahead of you, and think before you make a decision wisely, because a lesson learned is a lesson that should be acted upon. And we've learned few lessons today from the story of why the pig lost his trunk.
Hi, it's Little J. Today I'm going to start from where Big J stopped. And today I'm reading about the Tudors in Black and British. Tudors, 1485 to 63. You hardly ever see black people in films and pictures of Tudor England, but they were there. Historians have dug through the archive to find the names and stories of hundreds of black Tudors. John Black, trumpeter at the court of Henry VIII. If you learned about Henry VIII and his 6 wives at school, you'll know how desperate he was to have a son. When his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, had a baby boy in 1511, Henry was delighted. He didn't know that the baby prince would only live for a few weeks. The king threw a huge party to celebrate the birth. The Westminster tournament went for 2 days with processions and jousting, and Henry ordered artists to paint a picture of the whole event on the scroll known as the Westminster Tournament. Wow. There are 2 parts which show trumpeters playing at the opening and closing. Both of them show very clearly the face of a black man among the uniformed musicians. We know from court accounts that there was a black trumpeter in the court of Henry VIII and his father Henry VII, and that name was John Blank. He is the earliest black person in British whose name and face we know. Wow! We know other parts of John Blank's story too. John played for the Tudor royal family for years and was right at the center of this historic royal events. Wow! He played at King Henry VII's funeral and his son Henry VIII's coronation. John even wrote to Henry VIII to ask for a pay rise so that he would be on the same level as the other trumpeters. When John got married, the king sent him a new out as a wedding present. Wow. John Blank was one of several hundred black Tudors historians have found in the record. Many of them probably came to Britain from Spain and Portugal, a country with more contact and trade with Africa than England had. Henry VIII, first wife Catherine of Aragon, was Spanish. When she first came to England in 1501, she brought a whole group of servants and followers with her, including Africans. Catherine wasn't the only European royal to have Africans working. There was a fashion at the time for Africans in royal court, especially as musicians. Having Africans as part of their households let rich Europeans show off their international connection and let everyone know that they were part of the sophisticated modern world. There was a fashion at the time for Africans in royal crown. Over the years, when the Tudor kings and queens were on the throne, British merchants began to trade with Africa and even take enslaved Africans across the Atlantic. As those journeys increased, more and more Africans arrived in Britain. Most black Tudors in Britain were not slaves. They had ordinary lives and jobs, often working as servants. They married local people and had children. Later on, Britain had built up its slave trade and its slave-owning colonies in America and the Caribbean. People began to assume that slaves were black people, but that idea did not exist in Tudor England and Stuart England. The Age of Discovery. The Tudor period was part of Europe's Age of Discovery, when sailors began to explore the world and be far off from mysterious oceans. That included the seas around most of Africa. British ships were not the first to begin sailing directly from Europe to West Africa. A century before English sailors started making this journey, Portugal sent ships to explore the unknown African sea south of the Mediterranean. Portuguese sailors had the most advanced ships, and they used science learned from the Muslim world to find their way. Bit by bit, or by order from the King of Portugal, they inched their way around the coast of Africa. They ventured further and further south, occasionally bringing back interesting finds. The Portuguese explorers set out to find the wonders of Africa they had read about in ancient travelers' tales, and they also wanted to get rich like Britain. The African kingdoms had many valuable goods to trade, like dyewood, ivory, and pepper. Most of all, the explorers wanted African gold. Once they could buy gold from West Africans on the coast and take it straight to Europe on ships, they no longer had to rely on the Muslim traders who crossed the Sahara Desert. They built up their trade with Africa and shut out other European countries. By the 1460s, the Portuguese had built a base on the island off the coast of Mauritania, which they used to trade with the local Africans. You see on the map where the arrow is pointing right here. When the English heard about the wealth the Portuguese were bringing back from Africa, it sounded too good to miss out on. In the 1530s, English traders started to make journeys to the ports of West Africa where the Portuguese had built up their trade. How did English trade with Africa begin? The first man was tried was William Hawkinson Devon, a merchant who was used to trading with France and Spain. Hawkins set sail for Africa in the 1530s and then took from Africa to sell in Brazil. Oh no. And the large castle in this map is Elimina Castle in present-day Ghana. Wow. The first European building in sub-Saharan Africa. The next English sea captain tried to break in Corporal's trade with Africa was Thomas Windham. Windham was a former pirate who didn't mind a robbery and violence to go with his business. He had an important advantage: his second in command. Prince Tudor was an experienced captain. He came to England after after making powerful enemies in Portugal. He knew how to sail the sea around West Africa and how much money there was to be made. Pintido and Windham set out for Africa in 1553. The voyage was paid for by London merchants and by King Edward VI. Thomas Windham went to trade, but he also attacked Portuguese ships and stole from them. He managed to trade with the Africans for gold and pepper, but then he made his big mistake. He didn't listen when Pintido said they should head home. As they sailed on, Windham's crew fell ill with fevers. 2/3 of them died before they made it back to London, including both Windham and Pintido. Still, the voyage was a business success. The merchants who had paid for it were happy with the profit they made, and they could see that trading with Ka would be worth the risk. The 5 men of Shaman. A few months later, the merchants paid for another voyage. This time, the captain's name was John Locke, and his mission was more successful than Windham's. He took 3 ships to the Gold Coast, now Ghana. So Ghana used to be named the Gold Coast. Wow. Managed to make it home alive and brought back pepper, ivory, and most importantly, lots of gold. He also brought back 5 African men from the village of Shama. We know the English names that 3 of them used: Anthony, Benny, and George. The men from Shama spent a few months in London before going home. The plan was that they had learned English and gone back to Africa, but they would be interpreters and help English traders make deals with Badoe. If the English want African gold, they needed to learn to work with experienced African trade. The West African kingdoms were strong, rich, and had been trading with outsiders for centuries. They knew exactly how valuable their gold was. The kingdoms the Tudors explorers could deal with it included the Oyo Empire in modern Nigeria, the Huni in modern Benin, the Akan people who lived near the coast of modern Ghana, and the Empire of Benin in modern Nigeria. West African kingdoms were strong, rich, and had been trading with outsiders for centuries. The Oba kings of Benin were especially rich and powerful and ruled from a magnificent palace in Benin City. You can see many beautiful craft decorations from the Oba Palace in museums in Europe and America. Because more than 300 years later, Victorians from Britain came to Benin and took them. But in John Locke's time, English merchants were no match for the armies of West African kingdoms. The voyages of John Hawkins. The Tudors never did manage to take control of the African gold trade from the Portuguese. Instead, some English traders found another way to make a profit. They knew that Spanish and Portuguese were buying slaves in Africa. Oh no! And taking them across the Atlantic to work in Spanish and Portuguese colonies in the Americas. Oh no! John Hawkins, an English merchant, tried to copy this idea. He made 3 trips to West Africa as well as trading. He attacked Portuguese ship and captured the enslaved African he found. Sometimes he took local people straight from their homes and burned and raided local towns. Then he sailed across the Atlantic and sold the people as slaves in Spanish colonies in the West Indies. These trips made John Hawkins rich. They also proved that selling human beings was a way to make huge amounts of money. Hawkins had the backing of Queen Elizabeth I herself. She gave him money and ships to support his voyages and rewarded success at slave trading by making him known. The last voyage John Hawkins made in 1568 was a failure. Lost 3 ships in the battle against the Spanish. For decades, the English gave up on the slave trade across the Atlantic. Sir Francis Drake, Sea Africa meant to the Tudors. We can look at a man whose story has been told many times before. The most famous sea captain of Tudor time, Sir Francis Drake, is known as an English hero, as well as being the first person to captain a voyage all the way around the world. He also helped to defeat the Spanish Armada's attack on England in 1588 and was knighted by Elizabeth I. He was also a cousin of the slave trader John Hawkins and occasionally a slave trader himself. On one voyage, he worked with a group of Africans in Central Africa called the Cimarrones, helping to capture Spanish silver. Some of the Cimarrones chose to join Drake's cruise and sail back to England with him. One of them, whose name was one of 4 African sailors to join Drake on his historic journey around the world in 1577. Elizabeth I gave Francis Drake a present, which shows how important she thought his links with Africa were. The Drake jewel has a miniature portrait of Elizabeth on the outside, a carved picture of a black African man's head in front of the head of a white European. African face could have been included to represent Jake Brand's Cimarrones. The jewel shows that through England, Africa was a land of opportunity. England wanted to use its ships to become a great power in the world, and Africa was part of that plan. What I learned was that we should never slave trade too much, or else we will get the consequence. Thank you for joining us in Reading with Joan. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!
And I'll see you next time on Reading with Joan Storytime. Bye!